Our topic is the blood of innocent cries out for justice. The blood of the innocent cries out for justice. Actions inevitably bear consequences, and history serves as a relentless reminder of the harsh reality that injustice, especially the grievous shedding of human blood, often spirals into relentless cycles of violence, instability, and devastation. Political assassinations, brutal wars, chilling genocides, and systemic economic exploitation have all caved deep scars into the fabric of our societies around the globe. These ceaseless power struggles, driven by insatiable greed and relentless thirst for dominance, have inflicted profound suffering on humanity that continues to echo through this time. The stark truth is particularly palpable in Africa, where a turbulent history of coups and foreign interventions has left nations teetering on the precipice of despair, undermining progress and robbing countless individuals of their stability and dignity. The term coup d'etat, which derives from French phrase signifying a blow or a punch, is often cloaked in the deceptive guise of necessary political transformation aimed at greater good. But in contrast, it is often wielded as insidious weapon by powerful nations, allowing them to manipulate weaker states for their own exploitative ends, which primarily is economic gain disguised as noble political reform. Time after time, we have seen how these foreign-backed coups have plunged African nations into chaotic disarray, stifling the potential for democratic development and ushering in protracted period of anguish. Countries like Nigeria, alongside countless other continents, continue to carry the heavy and unjust burden of these actions, with their own citizens becoming unwitting victims in conflict driven not by their aspirations, but rather by the interests of external powers. So for 25 years, the indigenous peoples of British Nigeria have relentlessly championed their cause through Nina's movement, which is a powerful testament of endurance and resilience in the face of global injustice. Through a robust framework of local and international advocacy, Nina's has organized meetings, rallies, enlightenment workshops. They have laid bare the brutal truth of colonialism, neocolonialism, and systemic oppression. Through Nina's, we have sent unwavering messages that rings clear. The era of exploitation, bloodshed, and subjugation of the people under the heavy hand of foreign domination has been rendered a relic of the past. Are you part of this journey? Are you going to join us to fight this injustice, which has no rightful place in our land? We know that historically that religious missionaries and oppressive regime has been used as a tool to dismantle our rich cultures, profane spiritualities, and political structures. Colonial powers has also been used to weaken our local governance, conditioning entire population to accept the yoke of oppression, slavery, and foreign control as the norm, sometimes even showing it to us as the will of God. This psychological manipulation has opened the floodgates, allowing nations to be annexed, their invaluable resources plundered, and their sovereignties stripped bare, all under the force of pretending to be serving our civilization. So now, more than ever, it's imperative for us to recognize and embrace our role in this transformative movement by Ninas. We must stand resolute against oppression. We must challenge the pervasive lies and entrenched system that has perpetuated the bondage of our nation. We must support the Ninas strategy that will liberate the people of not just Nigeria, but also Africa as a whole. The future of injustice, instability, fights, death hinges on the courageous souls who will dare to fight it. So are you going to be part of this noble cause? Are you going to join us? We are inviting you today as we continue with this interactive section to come on board, come on this train, this movement that is in place for us to bring back our sovereignty for good and not for criminals to continue to use for their own gains. I will pull up the video for the day while my sister had.
Yes, we'll pull up the first video. You know how we do it here. We bring information, trends all over the world, internationally and nationally, everywhere. Make it make sense. Bring it together for you so that when you see them, it will make more sense to you. And then you understand why we do what we do. So those that are seeing our video for the first time, please calm down and wait to the end of the show so that things will add up for you. This first video that we are playing, it's where we're showing you, because we'll start from outside our space and then come inside, how the West destroys and destabilizes countries because of their selfish interest, just like my sister said at introduction. The things you see have deeper meaning. They will come and tell you something else, but there's something else going on the ground. For all the genocides, war, coups in Africa, most of it, except just few that maybe the indigenous people revolted, but most of it is orchestrated by them. So please pay attention and listen very well. We'll break it down for you even after. Thank you.
There's a weapon that powerful countries use to get rid of leaders they don't like, leaders from other countries. It's called a coup. It's a French word that means a punch or a blow, because it kind of means coming in and forcibly punching out a government from power. No elections, no process, just power being seized. Just someone being pushed out and someone being put in. Coups happen in so many different ways, but I want to show you how the coup has been used by the United States of America as a tool to get what they want on the world stage. These are the coups that I think best exemplify how this tool has been used for international power over the years. Let's start here. In the independent country of Hawaii. It's 1893, and the U.S. is feeling like the Hawaiian Queen is a threat to American control over sugar. It's sugar that's being grown by the descendants of white American missionaries who had settled in Hawaii over the years. The U.S. sends a military ship with hundreds of troops to show up to Honolulu, and they overthrow the Queen, installing one of those descendants of the Christian missionaries, Sanford B. Dole, as the new president. Notice his last name? Yeah, this coup was one of the US's first, and it set the stage not only for the new Hawaiian president's family to grow their powerful international corporation, which was based in Hawaii, but also for Hawaii to be annexed, to become a part of the United States. The next coup has to do with Spain. Well, actually more like Spain's colonies. They are a declining empire, and there is major resistance in their colonies, especially in Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Meanwhile, the US is a rising empire, and they already are pretty uncomfortable with Spain having colonies like 100 miles off their coast. But at the same time, they don't love the idea of true independence for places like Cuba or Puerto Rico. These are strategic islands right in the US's neighborhood. And, like Hawaii, American companies have money invested, particularly in Cuba. Independence might mean them getting kicked out. So the US delves into this fight between Spain and their colonies. They use the explosion of an American Navy ship as their excuse, even though it was likely an accident, not an attack. But sometimes stories matter more than truth. So the US sends in troops to liberate the rebels fighting against their Spanish colonizers, promising them independence, not only in Cuba and Puerto Rico, but later over here in the Philippines and Guam. These local uprisings eventually drive out the Spanish. And in all of these cases, the US reneges on their promise to give independence to these locals. And they figure out ways to govern Cuba and Puerto Rico indirectly themselves. The US has just piggybacked off several independence movements to enact several coups at once, allowing them to install pro-American leaders and a Navy base in Cuba, and eventually annexing Puerto Rico and Guam, which they still control, and the Philippines, which they held for 48 years. Okay, so we're over here in Nicaragua. It's 1909. There's a bunch of powerful American companies here, but a new president comes to power vowing to regulate them. The US is not going to let this happen. So the Secretary of State starts spreading rumors to smear this guy, this president, saying that he's building a canal that would compete with the Panama Canal. But really, they're just upset because Nicaragua's taking loans from Europe. The US keeps painting this guy as a war criminal and someone worthy of being thrown out. So push comes to shove, and the US sends ships to both of Nicaragua's coasts. They assemble a bunch of Marines in Panama, basically just flexing on Nicaragua and telling the president to step down. And the benefit of being a rising superpower is that it worked. He has no choice but to step down. And soon, a leader that the US likes comes to power. The coup is complete, and really, this is the first of many instances of the US meddling in Nicaragua. A few years later, the US is back in the region for another coup in next-door Honduras. This one was plotted by a band of private American citizens, and it follows a similar pattern. A new president comes to town, in this case directly inspired by Nicaragua's president, and he wants to take back control of the country from American businesses. In this case, we're talking about bananas. The banana companies were not going to let this happen. And it was mostly this guy, a banana businessman named Sam the Banana Man. He's not going to let this pesky president run his country. No. So he assembles his own militia. He literally buys a surplus Navy ship, loads it up with weapons, and starts his campaign to get this president out. He sails from New Orleans to the coast of Honduras, and he literally invades the country with like a private army. Wait, where's the US government in all this? They also didn't like the political direction of Honduras either, so they just sort of stood back. Let this private invasion happen, and then at the critical moment, the US steps in to order a ceasefire, basically bullying the president to step down. He had no way forward, no defense, so he resigns. And the Banana Man's leader of choice takes the presidency, giving the banana businessman land and a unique status to import anything he needs tax-free. And, wait for it, he refunds him for all of the coup expenses using public Honduran money. This banana man literally overthrew the government and made Honduras pay for it. Wow. Okay, so let's move forward to the 50s, where the coup becomes a more useful tool in the American toolkit. There's this new US agency dedicated to collecting and analyzing information from all over the world, meaning for spying. They call it the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, and it completely revolutionizes the art of the coup. Oh, and at this point, the US is now a full-blown global superpower, no longer just looking in their own neighborhood, but rather at the whole world map, investing huge resources into fighting their global rival and its communist ideology. So this gets us to Iran, 1953, where Iran had just elected a new star politician, Mohammad Mossadegh. He rises to power believing that Iran must take back control of its most valuable natural resource, oil, which at the time was completely controlled by a British company called the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. We know it today as BP. Mossadegh is done with this. Let's kick the British out and take back our oil. But like the US, Britain is not happy with Iranians trying to take back their resources. So they warn that if they do this, there will be consequences. So the British catch a quick meeting with the CIA's Middle East guy who was passing through London, and they pitch him on this idea. Let's throw out Mossadegh. The CIA is like, okay, and they kind of sniff communist vibes on Mossadegh with this big desire to nationalize Iran's oil, or at least they tell themselves they do. So the CIA agrees, and they secretly send this guy to Iran. He's the Middle East bureau chief, Kermit Roosevelt. He's like in his 30s. Oh, and yes, he is the grandson of another big coup guy, Teddy Roosevelt, who I have gone into in other videos. Roosevelt sneaks into Iran and is given $1 million taxpayer dollars to use, quote, in any way that would bring about the fall of Mossadegh. So now there's American CIA agents in Iran secretly trying to overthrow the government. And it's a rocky start at first with a bunch of failures. But they start using their money to get traction, bribing politicians, religious clerics, and other leaders to say divisive and controversial things about Mossadegh. They hire locals to stage attacks against religious leaders, making it look like they had been ordered to do so by Mossadegh. But really, they were just getting paid by the CIA to do this. And with enough time and money, they create an atmosphere of chaos and hostility and distrust among the public. Oh, and there's weapons. The CIA stashes enough weapons and explosives to support a, quote, 10,000-man guerrilla organization for 6 months, like just in case they need to, like, start a full-on conflict. The result of all of this is more violence and chaos that engulfs the capital. Shops are being destroyed, bullets are flying into mosques, people are beaten, and thousands of paid demonstrators flood the street. The city falls into anarchy, all of it orchestrated by CIA money. And in the end, This all results in a bloody shootout at Mossadegh's house. He eventually gives up and turns himself in. He's put through a sham trial and found guilty of treason and sentenced to 3 years in solitary confinement and then house arrest, where he stayed until his death. The previous ruler of Iran, Mohammad Reza Shah, which just means king, had fled the country. But now, with the democratically elected Mossadegh gone, and with the backing of the US and UK, he could charter a flight back into Iran and take control.
The Shah crowns himself in a tradition which goes back 25 centuries. His title is King of Kings, and he becomes Emperor of his nation.
The US really came out on top here. They got what they wanted. They now have an American-friendly dictator in a powerful country in the Middle East, who is now welcoming American oil companies to get in on one of the largest oil reserves on Earth. Under the Shah, Iran becomes a brutal police state. He executed military officers, student leaders, anyone associated with Mossadegh. He set up a secret police force, and life was brutal. So brutal that in 1979, the frustration of Iranians burst forth in mass protests that ran the Shah out of office and replaced him with an inspiring new leader who would turn Iran into an Islamic republic, built in part off a foundation of resentment for the US having meddled in their country. The Islamic Republic has held power ever since, and has morphed into the oppressive theocracy we know today, though maybe not for long. Okay, let's keep going. The next year in Guatemala, the CIA tried to pull the same playbook that they used in Iran, once again targeting a leader that the people had elected, but who wanted to take back the country's resources for the people, to break up these American monopolies that controlled the country's electricity and railroad. The president even starts to seize land from one massive banana company. It was often unused land that he wanted to redistribute to the locals who could farm it and feed their families, and hopefully climb out of the system of endemic poverty in the country. The US decided that they had to defend the banana companies, or else more communist reforms would spread. So the US President and Secretary of State ordered an overthrow, and the CIA got right to work. The CIA hand selects a leader that they want to be in power. And then they start giving equipment and training to a bunch of Guatemalan exiles and private soldiers. They set up a secret operation base on the outskirts of Miami. They start delivering weapons to the Panama Canal. But like the other coups, it can't just all be about weapons. They gotta own the information space. So they create a radio station that sounds like it's a local Guatemalan radio station, but really it's being operated out of a small town in Florida. And they start publishing fake news about an uprising, unrest, a rebellion. And then, at the same time, the fighters that the CIA had trained and armed invades Guatemala. Pilots start dropping bombs on fuel tanks and military posts and airports. But they weren't starting a full-on war. They weren't trying to cause real damage. They wanted it to feel like a domestic uprising, like a war was on the horizon, to freak people out. And for many, it totally worked. And just like that, one president is out and the hand-picked CIA option is in. This new regime is brutal and goes on to do horrible things. Detaining people they thought were communists, killing prisoners, breaking up labor unions, and in the process, restoring the banana company's land and ensuring that they maintained their hold on this economy. This kicks off an era in Guatemala of more political assassinations and instability, something that still plagues the country today. And yet to this day, there is no evidence that the Soviets were ever slightly interested in Guatemala. Communism was once again the excuse, but really this was about securing American business interests, tearing a country apart for bananas.
Bananas taste the best and are the best for you.
So that's our list. These are our coups that we decided to go over in this video. There are so many more that we could have mentioned. This is something that powerful countries and empires.
Whoa.
Yes.
Go ahead.
My people, if you notice, there's always that an item in the middle. If it's not banana, it will be cocoa. It can be palm fruit. It can be crude oil, mineral resources. Like my sister already told us during introduction, their business interest. It might be one businessman. It might be a corporation. They want something, so they sponsor an unrest and kill the people so that they can get what they want. Our sister Dafe Enuma can read what she wrote. So you see, they cause trouble and then bring solution. They tend to bring solution. Meanwhile, that one that caused it, they will use the wealth of a nation and fund projects that will not benefit the locals. Like in Nigeria, when the colonial monsters came to build railways, they did not build railways that will connect Africans and Nigerians. No, they will build railway that will connect the raw material to the ocean where it will be exported to make it easy for them to exploit the people. It's not for transportation. It's not for the daily life of the people to be easy. That's not why they're coming. So you must watch these things. When they tell you diplomacy and intelligence, it is not about making the world safe. No, it's about exploiting the people. Ordinarily, why is it that diplomacy and intelligence should not be about making the world a safer place, making the world better, making the world more peaceful, not causing chaos everywhere? Why would they use religion to colonize people? Why would they use religion to build empires? Like we told you people here, when they bring Roman Catholic, is to make Rome better. The whole thing is going to Rome. Anglican is England. The rest, Pentecostal individuals, is about empire building. It's not about the kingdom of men, not about the kingdom of God. Religion should be personal. Should be personal. Yes, it should be personal. You should not build a big institution of religion and use it to scam people. And we have told you here that institutionalized religion is a scam. It's oppressive theocracy. No one should be exporting religion. Oh, missionaries. What are you missionarying? Religion should be local. If you are doing that religion and you teach your people and they're very good, we can come and copy it from you. But you know, you will come and say you want to export it. We are coming to teach the locals how this one to do. Meanwhile, you are just using it as opportunity to bring in the colonial masters. That's what it is. They will organize bloody shootouts. If you listen to what, because we are breaking it down for those, because sometimes due to asset, our people might not hear very well. If you listen, he says something about how they organize bloody shootouts and make a fake arrest, a fake house arrest for their agent to, then they will make him face sham trial for treason and then deceive the public. Does this ring a bell? Ndi Biafra, does this ring a bell to you? If the people elect a president that will...
In this edition of Back in History, we're discussing the trial and execution of Muhammad Vatsa.
Oh my goodness, so sorry.
It's okay. If the people elect a president that will break up foreign corporations and monopolies, that will take back resources of the people and build infrastructure for the people, that will stop endemic poverty, they will come. These vultures and viruses will come. They will come with one story. So we are saying we are tired of bunch of low-thinking failures running our affairs. See what we told you at the beginning, what is happening at National Assembly. It's just to confirm what we have been telling you. The people must arise for this change and embrace this change. We cannot allow a bunch of failures to continue to think for us and say they are managing our affairs. When they can't even manage the affair of their immediate family, their wife and 2 children, they can't handle it. How can they come and handle our affairs? They are not able, whether political, religious, all of them. If you listen to that video, he said that they will use fake politics and fake religion to brainwash the people and create an atmosphere of chaos, hostility, and mistrust among the people. You see why Ninas has told indigenous peoples to avoid killings, chaos, anarchy in every sensitization you're doing. This self-determination, we don't want you to employ chaos, anarchy, because you play into the hands of the enemy, because that's what they wanted anyway. And this is also why Ninas told indigenous people to trace back to their ancestral homeland. If you're Yoruba, Ijo, Igbo, trace back to your land. Because when you go to your land and begin to cleanse it and organize it, like Soludo is doing in Anambra State, also Soludo, fake people, all these fake things, cleansing it, and then you begin to organize, it is more difficult for the enemy to infiltrate you because you know yourselves. Igbo people in your communities, you know yourselves. Yoruba people in your communities, you know yourselves. So you can organize from down the grassroots not on top. On top is fake. Organizing from Abuja, anybody organizing anything from Abuja is a colonial a colonial puppet. They are agents of the colonial monsters. They want to continue to keep you in that bad. We don't want it. We want the indigenous people to own their land, take care of their space, organize themselves in their ancestral homes. Umunna, Umwada, go back to your land and begin your organization from there. This conversation has to get there. You watching us, you are the one that will take it to your villages. Go and tell your villages. That salvation has come. And this is salvation.